Welcome to the DevLaunch podcast, bringing you insights from industry experts on how to grow the digital agency you love. Have you ever wondered what it takes to build, grow, and eventually sell an agency? In this episode, I'm sitting down with Jason Swenk, an industry legend who's done it all, from accidental agency owner to a massive 8-figure exit and beyond. We dive into the secrets of agency profitability, the art of knowing your numbers, and the pitfalls to avoid when negotiating your exit. Whether you're thinking of selling your agency or you just want to run it better, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you won't want to miss. You're kind of a podcasting legend, actually, Jason, because I've been looking at a lot of your stuff and been eyeing it for a little while, so I appreciate it.
Perfect.
All the more reason why I'm like super excited to have you on the show today. I mean, Jason, I don't know, would you mind just even introducing yourself a little bit about like your background, who you are, why we're talking today?
Yeah. Jason Swenk. I started an agency by accident in '99. I was designing a website, making fun of one of my friends. I looked like Justin Timberlake. So I got my start because of Justin Timberlake, but the website was called In Shit. It got popular. And then people started asking me to design websites. And so just started doing $500 websites. And then that turned into doing, eventually many years later, doing websites for Porsche and Lotus Cars and building LegalZoom and all of those, the biggest brands in the world, and then exiting and then sold, depressed, tried to do a couple different companies that I didn't like, and then started a podcast 10 years ago. In 2014, where I just interviewed some of my old competitors and friends in the agency space, and we just talked about agency life. And I've been doing that ever since. And now we run a lot of different masterminds for agency owners, where we connect the most amazing people together.
Yeah, and you along that journey, I mean, you also had a pretty successful exit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was an 8-figure exit, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Might have been a little bigger, but
a little bit bigger. At least 8 figures, yes. Which is, I mean, that's substantial. When we're talking about the agency space, like that's not nothing. Because, I mean, I'm sure people who are listening to this, we know agencies typically don't get great revenue multiples or EBITDA multiples in comparison to something like a SaaS company or something like that. So to get an 8-figure or more exit, it's not nothing.
Well, the numbers that you need to hit are probably around, if you're going to get a 5x multiple, you just need to get 2 million in EBITDA to get an 8-figure exit. But if you can get more, right? Because like I bought 10 agencies in the past 3 years, and we've only been buying agencies that are over the million in EBITDA or net profit, if that's easier for people to. Because for many years when I was running my agency, I was like, what's EBITDA?
Right.
But you are right. The valuations for a service-based business are way lower than a technology or a SaaS. Because like SaaS and technology, you get, like, for example, I interviewed, I don't want to say the company. It's a huge, like they sold for billions of dollars. But he only owned like 3%. And then after taxes and he paid everybody, he still only walked away with like 7 million. And I'm like, and if I said the company, you guys probably use this company like every day or most when you go on trips. But I kind of felt bad for that because they're always taking investments and they're always designed to spend all the money they have versus service-based businesses. We want to be profitable.
Right. I mean, arguably, you have to be in order to get the type of valuations you're talking about. I mean, you're even saying 2 million in EBITDA. I mean, for some agencies, that might be a real stretch. It might require a lot of revenue because it's not a very efficiently run agency. I'm assuming when you exited, you were a pretty well-oiled machine, or what did that look like when you exited?
Yeah, I mean, we were, and look, we were well-oiled. We had the right people in the right seat. Our financials were, and that's not because of me. Like, I fucking hate spreadsheets. I see in color and pretty pictures. But I always knew that here are the KPIs that we were going after. and then making sure that was there. So when the person buying us, they were like, ask for this particular report, here you go. Versus when we come in and we'll buy someone, they're scrambling and they take like a week to put that information together. And then I'm like, And then what we find is a lot of times the agency is not where they thought they were. They're not even close. So if I did a letter of intent to an agency that was $1 million in EBITDA and I valued you at 5 million, and then you came back to me and with the real numbers and it was 500,000, well, that valuation probably went to 500 to $1 million valuation. Like that's a pretty big deficit.
Yeah, I'll say. And I mean, would you say that happens, I guess, like relatively often?
All the time.
Really?
People don't know their numbers. They're so, they were like me. They were an accidental agency owner. They knew how to do something cool. And someone offered, like, hey, can you do this? And then you were like off to the races. And then you built the business on referral and word of mouth. And you just kept getting the same. And you were just being reactive to the market versus being proactive. Interesting. And so, it's just it's a cycle to hit a plateau very quickly.
Well, I mean, so you had already said this though, by the time you went to exit for the first time, you did have a lot of that stuff in place, not because of you, it was actually in spite of you, but like what led up, like, did you hire like a COO, a CFO? Like, how did you get to that spot?
Well, it took many years of failing. And, like I just got off a mastermind call with our members a little while ago. And one of the questions I asked them was, someone asked how to do something, like how to scale. I said, that's the wrong question. You should be asking, where do you want to go? And then the two who's. Who do you need to hire to figure out the how? And then who do you need to become in order to take the agency to the next level? And so it took me, like when we started transforming, we all started as agency founders, but not many of us reached to agency CEO. And it took me to a point where I almost shut down the agency, and we were around 2 million at that time. And I took a job interview. Like I literally was like, I'm out. Like, I don't want to do it. And they asked me 2 questions. What do you want to do every day? And what do you ever want to do ever again? I couldn't answer it in the interview, but later on I thought about it and I started writing down all the things I never want to do. I don't want to do delivery. I don't want to do HR. I don't want to manage anybody. Now, managing people and having a ton of people is totally different. Like, I believe you hire people you don't need to manage, especially your managers, and then they have their own philosophy in that kind of way. But like, I'm a horrible manager. Like, you don't want me as a manager. And so I started thinking all the things I hate and then all the things I love. And then I realized I don't need to take a job. I can transform the agency into this. So I was like, who do I need to become? And here are the 5 roles that I started figuring out I love and I wanted to go into. And then I started, as I've been interviewing people for the past 10 years, I'm like, all the most successful people are doing this in their agency. One is setting the vision and communicating it to your team all the time. So then they can make decisions without you. And it takes you out of really kind of out of the day-to-day in a lot of things. Number 2 is coaching and mentoring your leadership team only, right? Don't coach the whole company, but just coach your leadership team and try, how can you make them better and make them better managers and leaders, like transform them into leaders. Number 3 is understanding the KPIs and the numbers to see where you need to make and change the vision or the direction where you're going. Then be the face of the agency, and then set up strategic partnerships and build strategic relationships. That's when we started going fast. Wow. And that's really what changed everything for us.
How about that? And I do want to talk a little bit more about the strategic partnerships, because I think that's been something that's been coming up a lot as I've had more conversations. But I want to zero in here for a minute, because you're talking about knowing your numbers and really having clarity on that side of the house. Again, was there somebody in your leadership team that really kind of ran with that and gave you that clarity? And who was that person?
Our VP of operations. And so, but at the level we were, it made sense to bring that in. But for someone listening, if they're at 5 or 10, that might not be right for you yet. You could get away with a director. But what you're trying to look for is a good operator. Like, for example, a bad operator is going to come in and they're going to create a ton of stuff on top of everything you're doing, and they're not going to eliminate anything.
Hmm.
A good operator will free up your time, will give you great freedom. So one of the things I look for when I'm buying someone, or when I look for like in a successful agency, the owner's not doing marketing, they're not doing delivery, and they're not doing sales.
Hmm.
You have to have operators in each one of those. And if you're listening and you don't, well, figure out which is the one that you're the weakest at right now and put someone in that. And then so on and so on. And then you can get to the next level.
Hmm. I mean, that sounds very, very similar to kind of the EOS methodology. Is that what you guys had ascribed to in your agency?
No, but
Okay.
I mean, I know Gino, and I know a lot of agency owners that go through it. Any framework, that's people have success are very, very similar. So
That's very, very true. Yeah, a lot of these things are very transferable. It's fundamentals, basically fundamentals of business management.
yeah.
So I guess maybe the last question when it comes to the exit in particular, like had you guys been fielding offers, during your growth stage, or did it
Yeah.
just kind of fall into your lap?
No, whenever you start growing fast and you start getting a lot of attention, you'll have lots of people reaching out. The thing you have to do is figure out who's serious and who's going to waste your time.
Mm.
I do believe you should go through the process, because then you'll understand how people think and what do you need to change if you do want to have the option to sell. But there's a lot, especially out now, there's so much crap where people, hey, I want to buy your agency. And then really they just want to do a stupid roll up where they don't give you any money. They just give you phantom equity and you turn over the lead. Like there's so many people out with BS courses around that. And it drives me nuts. Like you should not sell, and let's talk about, a lot of times when I talk to people, I actually talk them out of selling to us. And my partners get mad at me a lot of times on this. I'm like, look, you're making over $1 million a year. You're not working much. What am I missing? Why do you want to sell? What are you doing next? Oh, I have no plans, which tells me there's something they're hiding, right?
Mm.
Like who wants to sell a business that they're taking away $1 million or have the opportunity to, not working much unless they already have plans. So I tell people, you only want to sell if you know exactly what you want to do next. So if you want to be an airline pilot, I just got my pilot's license, right? So if I want to be an airline pilot and I knew for very clear, I'd be like, all right, time to sell this business and I'll go do it. But when I sold the first agency, I was kind of lost because I just related myself to being an agency owner versus, creative, innovative, father, husband, all that kind of stuff, right? That, that I am, that no one can ever take away. I can never sell. And then the other reasons too is like medical or health issues, right? Or if you need the money too, right? But if you hate it and there's no way to fix that particular problem, like a lot of times our mastermind members will come to me, they're like, hey, I want to sell. Well, what's wrong? Well, I just don't want to deal with the business anymore. Well, what's the real problem? Oh, it's lead gen, or this is one employee. Well, what if we fix that? Would you still sell? No. Do you think we should fix that? They're like, okay, yeah. Versus if they hate everything about it, like I hate the agency space, then I'm like, sell the damn thing.
Yeah. Right. Which I mean, I think it's good though. I mean, even what you're saying here is you're not necessarily interested in what's going to be in your best interest, but also like when people are coming to you, you're wanting to know what's going to be in their best interest here. And sometimes the answer is you just need to tweak and fix a particular thing in your agency, not necessarily just get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah, a good exercise to think about is if you were going to sell tomorrow, you know all the skeletons in your closet. What would you fix tomorrow? Like we all should be doing that right now. And I'm a hypocrite on some of the stuff right now. I'll give advice on one of our mastermind calls, and then I'll call my team right after and be like, hey, you remember that advice I gave to Jackson? Like, we need to do that again.
But it's one of the great things about being a coach and being an educator is that like you're constantly being reminded of, oh, I should probably also eat my own dog food.
Exactly.
That's so good. I do want to move on to another question, but before I do, I'm so curious. You're talking about how you are acquiring agencies. I guess, and you've done this, was it, you said 3 times
10
so far?
times.
10 times. Okay. Multiple times at this point. Do you take a roll up strategy when you purchase agencies, or do you let them run kind of independently?
Yeah. So what we do, and this is what works best for us, right? Like that's the beauty about, listening to people's advice is there's no silver bullet, but there's all these different types of silver that you can kind of pull and then make your own silver bullet for what's right for you. But here's what worked for us. The criteria is most of the time they have to be at least $1 million in EBITDA. So we'll say you're worth 5 million, Tony. We'll give you 2.5 million in cash, day of close. The other 2.5 will be in equity in the new company. The day one of closing, you're still going to operate the same name, same personnel. We don't want you going anywhere. We're not even going to tell your clients for 6 months because we don't want them to worry. So when we go to them in 6 months and we're like, hey, we sold 6 months ago, they're like, service is actually better. Cool, great. Right? We don't have that churn. Right. And so that's our strategy. We want them to keep operating, but now they have more resources. We can help coach them. They can tap on, our finance or our marketing team. We can, eventually after 6 months, we can start eliminating some of the duplicate things that we have that they don't to make them more profitable and that kind of stuff. So that's how we operate.
But eventually, do you ultimately like merge them into and roll
No,
them up, or they all independent?
they all operate independent and they're a wholly owned company by us.
Wow. And I suppose that probably gives you some flexibility in terms of the niches that are being served, the services that are being rendered.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, this is not easy. The easy part's buying, the hard part's the integration.
Hmm.
And we're still struggling with that, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a continual evolution. Part of where I worked in corporate America, we saw mergers and acquisitions happen all the time. And it was that same thing. It's like, do you have this run independently or do you integrate it in with the brand? And I feel like nobody just really knows the answer to that one. So
Yeah.
I think it's very valid. So Jason, in a lot of the content that I've seen you put out there, you emphasize the importance of profitability over revenue when it comes to valuing an agency. So would you mind explaining a little bit of the metrics and factors that owners should consider to determine agency worth?
Yeah. I mean, revenue is nothing. And especially with the agencies and who you are who do the pass through income. Like I'm a $50 million agency and got 10 employees. I'm like, wow, that's amazing profitability. How much is in media spend? 49. I'm like, so you're $1 million in service? Like,
Yeah.
come on, like you're not fooling anybody. So the top line revenue doesn't matter, but profitability does. And it should matter to you as well, or like the owner, because that will dictate how much cash flow they have, which is the blood of the organization, allowing you to do things and operate in and make the right decisions. That's not just based on money. Right. Then you have some capital in order to invest or act as your own bank and that kind of stuff. So, but I think people get in the trap because they don't know what to charge. And they like, for example, like going back to mine, like I charged $500 and that was big. Like I was a 22-year-old stupid kid, knew nothing. It's like $500. I was like, used to living on ramen noodles. So I was like, huge. And then I went up to 1,000. I'm like, oh, big bucks. It's kind of like, coming to America and the guy is at McDowell's and he's like, I'm on fries now. But when I get on the hamburgers, the real bucks start rolling in. Right. So like, I was like that. But then you hit a certain cap and you can't figure out how to, get the prices or whatever. Or you start thinking, I have 20 clients now and I'm only $1 million in revenue. Man, I can't get 40 clients to get to 2 million. But what if you could replace those 20? Or what if you could replace 5 with bigger clients? Then you don't need all that infrastructure. And then you start thinking, man, what if I could, like I went from $500 websites. I think the biggest website we ever sold was close to $1 million. That's a big delta, right?
Yeah.
So people just haven't thought big enough and figured out going, who can I help? Who do I want to help? Who can I have the most impact for? And and here's a good exercise for people to think about is if you were going to only be paid on performance only, what would you do? Who would you do it for? Like they're only paying you after they get success and they're going to pay you a percentage on that. So if you answer that question, then you got like, because people come to me, they'll be like, I'm really good. Like there's many companies that have popped up. They will be nameless. They're really good at marketing. They're really good at sales, but they suck at delivery. They can't deliver results. So who can you deliver amazing results for? And then the rest will flow easier.
Right. Well, and essentially what you're touching on is something I talk about, which is revenue quality, not just revenue quantity. It's like, how can you maximize the value proposition so you can extract the revenue? And it's like, that's going to be one of the fastest ways for you to grow that EBITDA is by not necessarily doing more work, but doing higher value, higher quality work.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. So, I mean, like obviously EBITDA is going to be a big component when it comes to valuation for an agency. Are there any other metrics, especially as you're looking at acquiring, any other metrics that you're pretty tuned into or keyed into?
Reoccurring revenue, predictability, stickiness, their churn rate, right? I'm looking at, is any client more than 20% of their revenue? Red flag. Like we're trying to predict out, like, what's our revenue and what's our return on investment? Do they have one channel where they're building their pipeline versus 3? How can I scale that channel? Goes back to the day-to-day operations. Are they run by the owner? Because I can promise you, as an owner, you're going to get bought. You're not going to want to stay very long because you're used to being the alpha. Well, now you got to be the Bravo, or sometimes the Charlie, right? Like you're a lot lower on and a lot of agency owners have egos, right? Like I always tell people, get rid of the ego. Like I don't let people in the mastermind if they have egos, right? Like if you need the awards and the accolation, all that kind of stuff to make you feel better, great, go do it. But, like get rid of that, because those are the people that make the horrible team members later on. What else? Audited financials, which you like, CPA.
Yeah. I'll down
right?
for that.
You'd like that?
Oh, yeah.
I bet you didn't think I'd say that.
No, I was going to say that's actually surprising. I mean, especially at the size businesses you're talking about. Is that typically what you're going for? Is you want to engage a CPA to help audit those financials?
Yeah, exactly. Because it goes back to people that they think they're a lot higher than they really are. But if you had a third party go through it, tell you what it is, then you have a better idea of the better decisions to make. Like that just tells me you're able to make better decisions because now you know the numbers.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
Throw you a little bone there.
Well, hey, Jason, I appreciate that. I'm absolutely going to get that little excerpt and share that with everybody and everybody. But it's interesting, right? Because like when we talk about like our group of advisors that are helping us to grow our agency, a lot of times we can look to RevGen, which, don't get me wrong, like even I am a massive advocate of, let's spend the money that we need to spend so we can get our RevGen engine working well. But a lot of times we can overlook the importance of having that financial person on your team, because it's like you said, like you might be growing and you might think you're growing a lot faster or in a better spot than you actually are. And having somebody to kind of hold your feet to the fire is pretty important if you want to ever exit.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you want to lose weight, but you never get on the scale.
Yes.
Okay. Like you're gaining weight, dummy. Like, right. But you haven't weighed yourself. So then you keep making the same decisions until it's almost like you want to lose weight and you only weigh yourself on January 1st and then you can't adjust. So then the next year comes, you weigh yourself on January 1st and you're like, oh, that didn't work. And then a whole year wastes. Versus if you got on the scale once a day, then you could adjust every day or every week at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe on that note, if you were giving advice, I mean, you give advice all the time in your mastermind group, but if you're going to give advice to somebody who's like, at some point, I'd like to exit my agency, what's kind of the sweet spot for them to really start to get serious about making plans? How many years out?
Yeah, maybe a year. But everyone should build a business that has the opportunity to sell, because that business will create you more freedom and more money and more time. All of us got into business so we have more freedom. I do not know anybody that gets into business to not the opposite. Like, I want to be in prison by my business. So I don't know, maybe comment in the comments if you're that person. If that's your person, perfect. Prove me wrong. But any sane person, I think, wants to have more freedom. And so if you build a solid business where it gives you the freedom and the profit, and you can pick and choose to do what you want, who you want to work with, who's on your team without, all the other different things, then that's a business that people want to buy, and you don't have to sell it.
Right? You'd rather be in a spot where you have the opportunity to sell, but you just don't want to, rather than the opposite, where you want to sell, but nobody is interested in buying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And there's many options, right? Like when I ask people, I'm like, what's the goal of the agency? And I always go, is it to sell it? Is it an incubator agency where you build other things, right? Like there's lots of agencies now that will buy, like let's say they work with Amazon. People sell on Amazon. Well, they'll buy companies that sell on Amazon and use that as an incubator to grow that brand to sell, or they'll build a technology and they'll sell. And it's like, you just got to think, what's the end goal? Even though and you don't have to do it. And please don't say I'm going to sell in 5 years and put a time frame. You don't know how the market's going to be. You don't know where you're going to be. What if the market's down and you get to 5 years and you want to sell? You want to buy a stock at high and then sell low? Like that's not smart.
Yeah, be prepared at all times, essentially,
Yeah.
is kind of the takeaway on that front.
Yeah.
But in the topic of the selling, and specifically on the sales side, when agency owners are going through negotiations, what are some of the common pitfalls that you are aware that they should be aware of when they're negotiating, and how can they avoid those from happening?
Well, I mean, the biggest pitfall is they're so many emotions because they treat their business as their baby. And that goes back to how I was. I related my business to my baby. I am, an agency owner. That's how I would, look at myself. If you take the emotions out, you pretend you're giving advice to a friend, then you're like, I don't like, all right, you're going to give me stupid money for it? Great. Right. Like, there you go. It's an easy decision versus like, oh, I put so many sweat and tears in this and blah, blah, blah. Other things too, when you're going through negotiations, whatever they ask you for, ask for that back. If they ask for financials, ask for their financials.
Interesting.
Because you want to evaluate them. Do you have the opportunity and capability to buy us? If I would ask, have you done this before and can I chat with them? How long ago was it? So then you can chat with the person that sold like you, preferably a year out, because the first year is the honeymoon stage. Then the company really pisses you off after that. And then earnouts, you hardly ever see them. The one advice I'd tell you about an earnout that I've been telling we've been having discussions in our mastermind, because there's lots of members that have sold and getting ready to sell. I always tell, with an earnout, it's based on performance. And it's something that the company doesn't think you're going to hit. They kind of want you to hit it, but they really don't, because that means that's a pretty big payday that they have to pay out. And when you sell, they take control of your company. So it makes it harder for you to make decisions. So what I've told everybody is this: if there's any kind of earnout, you say, acquiring company, we make all decisions until the earnout is achieved or at a time frame. That time when the earnout is awarded, if we award it by that time frame or before that time frame, then you'll pay us the earnout. If you're not able to pay us the earnout, we will take back 100% of the company and keep everything that you've given us.
Wow. Now that's some strong negotiation there.
Yeah. Right. And I've had companies get their companies back, and they've kept $3 million in cash that they got.
That's incredible. I mean, they
controlled everything.
Yeah. Oh, and I wouldn't have thought about that piece, but you're absolutely right. It's like there's a contradiction in, or a misalignment of priorities there, where it's like the earnout is here, but you don't have any control to really make the earnout happen. So conflict of interest. That's a really good point. It's almost like you've done this before, Jason.
So, I've messed up a ton of times.
Is that right? But I mean, you've already shared a lot in the negotiations and things that people might, have faltered on in the negotiation process. Is there anything else that you can think of, and any other examples that people should be aware of when they're entering into negotiations?
Always have them say the number first. I mean, that's basic 101. If you say the number first, that's the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Did I say that right? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
that
Or
sounds
that's,
right.
yeah. You want them to go first, and then they set the floor, and everything else is going up.
Yeah, you're spot on with that as well. I mean, you talked about this earlier though. When it comes to fielding, you experienced this yourself when you were fielding potential buyers, is really getting to the root of what are their motivations. Um, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about how agency owners might be able to effectively uncover true motivations for potential buyers?
Well, a lot of times you just got to ask, and a lot of times they'll tell you. Or you ask them about past acquisitions and why did you buy them? And sometimes it's based on revenue, sometimes it's based on client, or sometimes it's just faster to acquire all your team members and your clients, right? Like once you get to a certain level, let's say, 50 people, like hiring another 50 takes a lot of time. It's easier to buy versus hire and train and fire and hire again and train, right? Like if you can just buy something already working, it's easier.
Yeah. I mean, in your example or your situation, what were the true motivations of who you sold to?
Theirs was revenue, but I thought it was they were buying, our team and what we wanted to do. So I didn't ask the right questions and they weren't as forthright to us. So that's what I learned from
Hmm.
that.
I see. I see. So ultimately, what ended up happening was they're really in it for essentially the client list, the work that you guys were already performing, and they wanted to add inorganic growth to their revenue.
Yeah. And we sold 9 months, or they sold 9 months later. So
Oh,
it was,
cool.
it was good. I got two exits, in a period of 9 months.
Hmm.
So yeah.
But did you do that where you ended up getting kind of phantom equity in the company that acquired
Mhm.
you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the deal was equity. So that's why I
Okay.
said I was able to kind of benefit twice.
Well, I know that was, and I think you had mentioned this earlier, but it's like maybe something to avoid when it comes to being acquired is where possible, get cash, because phantom equity for another privately
It's not
held company.
guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah. But you kind of lucked out 9 months later that they sold, because then it's like, okay, now we actually made money on that.
Yeah. Because if they never sell, you have this, okay. I mean, unless you have a deal in there where you can say, I want to sell it and here's the price that you're going to buy me for, which could be another negotiating thing.
Yeah. Well, you'd also touched on this too, and it has to do with after exit, what people's plans are. What should agency owners be considering when planning life after a sale?
Well, let me tell you before I get to that, ask me that in a second, because there's
Okay.
something important I want to tell everybody that I see takes down agencies. When you
Hmm.
go through a letter of intent and the due diligence, a lot of agency owners take their foot off the gas thinking, I don't need to solve this problem because it's going to be the person acquiring. And then you're not bringing in sales. You're like, screw it. That's someone else's problem. And then 9 months later, to however long it takes, they back out last minute. Now you're
Hmm.
screwed. And then you're scrambling. So something never until you have the money in your account and the contract is signed, don't assume it's going to happen.
Hmm. That was really good.
So what was the question again?
Yeah, no, it has to do with after exit or life
Mhm.
after exit. What should agency owners be considering when planning their life after sale?
I mean, I just think unless you get the FU number, right? That's like one of my friends, old Pardot, many years ago. They were losing $1 million at the time, and someone came and was like, 25 million, we'll buy it. And he said no. 50 million, said no. Finally, they got the FU number 75, and he said yes. Right? You're always like, depending on however you're old you are. Like when I sold, I think I was 34, 35. And you need to create. You've been creating for 10 years or 12 years or whatever it was. Like you doing nothing is boring as shit. And then you don't have that significance. So you just need to think, what do I want to do? What do I want to create? What kind of business do I want to put together? Like now money's not an object. So now you can make decisions without money, which only people with money make. And then the people with money tell people with non-money that, and then they're like, screw you. That's not true. And then, right. Like that's how I was. I was like, yeah, you guys are idiots. You still make decisions based on money. But no, it's like, and I can prove that point. Like, especially now as I'm getting closer to, I'm 47 now, I look back, I'm like, I would give all my money back today in order to go back 10 years.
Hmm.
Right. Like,
and maybe pulling on that thread, I mean, is there regret in that, or is it just like it would just be nice to relive 10 years ago?
No, like I mean, think about like any time you're upset with your business right now, just think you're 10 years down the road and you go, man, I wish I was here versus 10 years older. And like I'm not as, flexible or fast or whatever it is, right? Like or like people will sacrifice anything for their business. But that's a mistake, right? Like your health should be first, then the family, then your business. And it's always the opposite. And that's what I've learned over the years. That's how I've adjusted. I've been like, screw the business. Like I could build another business. I could start over. Like I had, there was some jackasses that have been, using our trademark. Like we own the trademark agency playbook because we have an 8-system framework for that. And so I sent out like a cease and desist, like a nice one. And then this jackass was like posting on LinkedIn, oh, this guy's, gurus trying to protect their mark, like just making up terms. I'm like, and then like all these people on the bandwagon get on it. Like that, like 10 years ago, that probably would have set me. Now I'm like laughing at it. I'm like, you guys are the dumbest people in the world. Like, it's just like business is business. Treat it like Monopoly. I can start over. I'm going to make mistakes. Like my son beats me in chess every day and drives me crazy. But we can restart tomorrow. There's a chance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We don't place too much significance into something that is not of utmost significance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I guess one thing I'm curious about, you've mentioned this already. You've had your exit. You're now acquiring businesses. Like, what's kind of the goal, or what's the desire for you right now as it relates to business?
My whole goal and throughout, agency mastery and everything that we do, it's all around being a resource I wish I had. That's how we make decisions. Like even our goal, like we don't have a revenue goal year over year that people look for. Our goal is to double the EBITDA of our mastermind members and reduce their time that they work in the business by 25%. If that happens, yes, our revenue will go up. Yes, we will get more people, joining that we want and that kind of stuff. So we look at it that way. Which I know is a little bit different than I just said about, knowing the KPIs, but we know the leading indicators for the members and we lead with them first. So like if you did want to get to, but we are extremely profitable and all that other stuff. So we do track that stuff, but we don't come out and go, guys, we need to hit 5 million. We need to hit 10 million every year. Like who cares?
Right. Well, maybe on that note, with Agency Mastery, this is your mastermind group. Like, I'm sure people who are listening to this, maybe some have already been a part of that, so they already know this. But for people who are not familiar with Agency Mastery, what is it? Like, what's the format? How long is the commitment? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's really pretty amazing. I always joke with people. I've always been looking for a mastermind for myself, and I've always struggled with that. And so I've created one that I've always wanted. And it's where we have amazing people that are humble, that love to share, that want to grow. And we get together a couple times throughout the month, virtually, and we talk about what's working, what's not working. We have members go through strategies that they're crushing it on. And then we have some just open discussions around, like we were talking about, open discussions around what's everybody's churn rate so they can kind of get a benchmark around that, or what's everybody doing to improve their stickiness, or, people are encouraging them to replace their operations person that they've had for 4 years that they've outgrown, because this business and any business is very lonely. And if you have outside kind of advisors where they can see the thing without emotions, then you can make faster and better, more informed decisions. And then twice a year we get together. In the next month, I rent out this 100,000 acre ranch in Colorado.
Wow.
And they have 2,000 bison and tons of horses. It's a 150-year-old ranch. So if you guys watch Yellowstone, we kind of play cowboys and cowgirls, and then we mastermind in the morning, but then we go have fun out on this ranch.
That sounds like so much fun. And it sounds like a great opportunity too to build camaraderie and to build friendship with other people who are kind of in the trenches.
The conversations that happen. So I always tell people, regardless what mastermind or what community you ever join, the real magic happens outside of the scheduled calls. If you can get to a physical event where you can meet with people, even outside horses, and we're just riding up the sand dunes, which are amazing. Just the conversations going on, be like, or sitting around the campfire. Like, that's what we all want. You build kind of those lifelong friends that really get to know where you're going, who you are, and then you can form those relationships and build businesses. And we've had many merge together, or others have bought each other, like shared business. So, that's the special thing that I'm most proud of those guys and gals. And we're about 40% women too. That's what I'm proud of.
That's huge. So, because agencies, typically, I could be wrong on this, but I think it typically leans a little bit more male.
Yeah, it does lean more male, but there's more and more amazing women. Like my wife has an agency. I didn't know it for a couple of years. we don't talk about work, but that was kind of funny. I was like, just don't buy any of my competitors' stuff. That'd be kind of embarrassing.
That's awesome. I love that. So, how big is this mastermind? Do you usually
we have 70
try to
members.
cap it?
Yeah, we have 70 members.
70, okay.
And then when we meet, we break them up into smaller groups of less than 12 members. And we break them up into around the employee count that they have. Because if you have 200 employees versus 10 employees, it's very different. And then also too, once a month, we help them figure out what do they need to focus on each quarter, whether it be attract, convert, or scale. That's their methodology. And then we have separate meetings for that they can attend so they can meet all the other members. So it's really pretty cool.
That's awesome. And I assume somebody can just go out straight to your website and they can go and sign up for this? Or?
Yeah, go to agencymastery.io and it will take you right there. And then you can just check out how we can help and then just apply. And then we'll have a conversation and see if it works for you.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, I'm going to assume, Jason, we've talked about a lot of really, really good things. I'm sure people are thinking, as it relates to exit, they're probably thinking to themselves, man, I'd love to ask Jason even a couple more questions. The obvious answer would be, join the Agency Mastery, get access to this too. But if people wanted to follow some more of your content or even just get to know you at all, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah. If you guys go to agency, or just go to the easy URL, go to swenk.com, SWENK. It will take you to our agency playbook, which is an 8-system framework. And as a gift for you guys listening, I'll give you access to the first 3 systems. These are the foundational systems every agency needs, whether you're starting or you're trying to scale or you hit a plateau. It will help you get that focus for where you need to go and share it with your team. It will show you how to position your agency so you're the choice rather than a choice. And it will show you the right offering that you need to do so you can win deals faster at a higher price and win them more often. So if you go to just swenk.com, SWENK, I give that to you guys for free.
Jason, I appreciate that offer. And I really hope our listeners avail themselves of this. This has been a very insightful conversation. I'm so thankful for the time that you've spent with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Tony.
And thank you to our listeners. If you found value in our episode today, please leave us a review and tell your friends about us. If you're interested in being a guest on our show as a digital agency owner, or maybe somebody with insights that can help digital agencies grow, head over to our website to learn more at equip.com/podcast guest. That's ACCQUIP.com podcast guest.